Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U. And thank you guys for your patience. Today, what we're going to do is a whole series of things that will make a huge difference for you. We're going to look at rewriting from a levels perspective. What levels are you writing at? I'll give you 3 of them. We'll then go through 7 different rewrite passes that can improve your script. And I'll introduce this class that we've just rewritten completely, our professional rewrite class that has made a significant difference for a lot of other writers. And let me tell you up front, we have had people win every major contest. Nickel, we've had 2 people win Nickel. Page, we've had a grand prize winner in that and a couple of other winners. Final Draft, a big break. We've had winners there, and Austin also. Every one of them went through this class. They actually went through an earlier version. This one we've now improved by about 50%, so it'll make a tremendous difference for you. So let's talk about the levels. First, if we start at the top here, most people are focusing a lot on words. They want to make sure their words are correct, they're perfect, they've chosen the best ones. Good strategy. Then they're looking at their dialogue and saying, are these cool lines? Do I like these lines? Can I make them better? And finally at action. Now, let me pause for a second, because this was the entire rewrite process I was taught early on for about, at least when we look at what people say, at probably somewhere around 90% of writers, this is the focus of the vast majority of their rewrite process. But there's some stuff that's beneath the surface here that can make a huge difference. And when we talk about professional level, this is what's down here is what pro writers are focusing most of their time on. So first, that's the situations and the scenes, right? What situations are you putting those characters in? And I'll talk about this later on, but if you just consider this, there's a lot of scenes that are in scripts that come into contest, and I've owned 3 major contests, or 3 contests that have been pretty successful. There's a lot of scenes that come in that are just straight talking head scenes, as in they have 2 characters sitting in a room or walking down the street or in a car, and all they're doing is talking. In that case, there's no situation. There's just 2 people sitting and talking, right? If you were in that car and they had a car chase, well, at least there's a situation. There's something going on. If it's a situation where somebody's having to tell another about the worst thing that's about to happen in their life, well, okay, then I get that. There's something that's going to change their life. You want to look at those situations. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Beneath that is character, making sure that your lead characters are incredible and there's something an actor would want to play. And beneath that is story. You know, do you have first a cool story? Does it have a concept that's interesting and compelling? Are we going through something that the transformational journey is something that we can't stop thinking about? Now, this is the second level. I told you up here is the first level of where most people rewrite. If we look at this whole thing, this is the second level. This is what we were teaching in the class up until now. I was in the midst of an interview with a screenwriter who had 8 of his scripts produced out of 9. So when he told me that, I said, do you mean 8 optioned? And he goes, no, 8 of my scripts have been produced out of 9. He's written 9 scripts, 8 were produced. They were made into movies that were in the $15 to $30 million range. And I said, wow, that's amazing. How did you do that? And here was his strategy. This was the thing that he said completely changed his life on this. He created the pitch first. Now, this isn't a small thing. What he basically said was, I create the pitch before I write, And once I know that I can sell it, then I write the script. So I asked him if he was in the middle of a rewrite, does he go back to the pitch? And he said, if that pitch isn't strong enough, yeah. He says, before I do a draft, I go back and make sure that pitch is really strong and that I'm delivering powerfully on that pitch. Now, when you do that, first, your story is going to be the best expression of the high concept, right? Which the high concept is how you get your project indoors. You say one or two sentences that completely lights a producer up, and they request it and want to work with you, or at least want to read the script. You make sure that you have an amazing transformational journey that could be in the 2-minute trailer. Again, what this is doing is telling a producer that this project is worth moving forward and it has a chance in the market. Then you look at your characters, you make sure they're designed to be sold to major actors. And this, it's like we spend a lot of time with characters, but if you haven't actually figured this out, how to sell them to major actors, you're going to have a problem getting that movie produced. So there's an added thing you need to do here. Then you look at the situation. You know, are you making those situations challenging? Again, we take the thing of two people in a talking head situation. If you looked at the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith, there's this whole conversation these two have back and forth where they uncover that each of them have been lying to each other, and they realize they need to rethink their relationship. If that same situation was just done sitting across from each other, wow, that's dull. But they put it inside a chase scene where they're driving a van and there's 4 other cars coming at them trying to kill them. And they're having this conversation while fighting those people in those other cars. It made that same conversation, the dialogue, 10 times as impactful. Action. Are you putting in action that major actors are going to want to play? Right? Are they going to want to take those actions? And dialogue, same thing. Or do you have cool lines that actors will want to say? Now, let me pause right here and say something. I was talking with a major actress at one point. I was doing an interview, and I said, everybody in the room is writers. They all came here tonight to hear everybody. I was wondering if you could tell us what causes you to sign on to a project. And this is what she said. She goes, I start reading my role and I just ask myself, are those actions I want to take? Right. And she said, then she gave us a couple of examples. She was in one action movie where she said she looked at it and she said, that would be the coolest thing in the world for me to be doing that. She wanted to take those actions. And then she said, then I look at the dialogue and I ask, are those lines that I truly want to say? And I said, so what if the lines aren't what you want to say? And she goes, well, usually I just say no to the project. But she says, sometimes I have then worked with the director and the writer to rewrite my lines so that they are what I want to say. And it's like, if she's going to go to that level, I'd be looking at your dialogue and just saying, how could you make it so cool that actors just sign on just because of that? And then finally, of course, there's the words. Most people are spending an enormous amount of time on words just to get them perfect. What you're going to find out when you get in this industry is what you need is a fast read. And there's a difference when you have big blocks of type all the way through. Readers are going to look at that and go, let me just skip it. And it'll train them. And they've told me over and over, this is what they've done. So instead of that, what if you made your script a fast read from the words perspective, so it's easy for them to fly through it and absolutely love it? Now, a couple of other things. Above this line right here, basically this is about editing. Below it, this line, it's about making improvements in the major components. When I talked with A-list screenwriters, they say this stuff is most important. When I talk with people who haven't been in the industry yet, a lot of times they're doing exactly what I was doing early on, which is focusing almost entirely on the words, the dialogue, and the action. Many times just changing one or two of these things down here can change or double or triple the chance that you have success. So, pass number one. The high concept. Start with that. What having to do with X, what haven't we seen? So if you're writing a horror movie, having to do with horror, what haven't we seen? You could go with genre. You could also look at, let's see, having to do with lead female characters, what haven't we seen? Having to do with stories about drugs, what haven't we seen? Whatever you're thinking about writing, start asking yourself, what haven't we seen? Because if you can find that on a big picture level, then you're coming in with a unique hook. You're coming in with something that's truly a high concept. Then you want to make sure you have a great title. This means your title's unique and it points to that high concept. The moment you say it, we can almost immediately see the high concept. The biggest example I have of that, I was talking with Steve Carroll at one point. I'm interviewing him at an AFI conference. And I said, so what are you working on next? This will tell you how long ago this was. And he said, we're working on a movie called 40-Year-Old Virgin. Now, let me pause. That was like 15, 20 years ago. It was just before the movie came out. Nobody had heard about it outside the industry at that point. But as soon as he told me the title, I could see the whole story. And he said, as soon as they came up with that title, they had success. Everybody he pitched it to laughed immediately and just went, yes. So it fit the genre, it pointed to the high concept, and it was unique. All right. It also, you need to make sure that your project speaks to an audience. So the question is, who's the audience that can easily be marketed to? Now, this is going to do a couple of things for you. First, when a producer says to you, who's the audience, or don't say everyone, by the way, because that means nothing to them. They're thinking, who do I market this to, right? So if your script is to teenagers in high school, and it's a high school movie, coming of age or whatever, you're just looking at it and going, okay, first, if a producer asks me that, I can say, this goes perfectly with teenagers in high school, right? There's your audience. They know how to market to that audience. They have marketed thousands of movies to them. The moment you say it, the producer in their mind sees similar movies to yours and goes, okay, I know how they sold that, right? And because that's their job. So just giving them an audience just automatically increase your chance of success. Second, as the writer, once you figure out who the audience is for your script, then you write to that audience. So if I was writing something to teens, I would write differently than if I was writing to people in their 50s who are having to make a major change in their life, right? The words, the language they use, the way they say things, the things they talk about, the things they obsess about, right? The things that matter to them, that are emotional for them, I would be writing at a completely different level. Those two scripts would look, from a dialogue perspective, completely different. So that's important. Pass number two. Now we're looking at your big picture decisions. So first, does every scene deliver on the pitch? And again, your pitch is how you are selling this to producers or to managers or agents. So whatever the pitch is, you need to make sure now your script delivers powerfully on that. back when Cheryl and I were producing, about 50% of the scripts that we requested didn't deliver well on the pitch. In some cases, I thought I had gotten the wrong script. So this makes a big difference. Once you know your pitch, you go back and do a rewrite to make sure every scene delivers on it. Second, you want to make sure that every structure point also does that. So you check each structure point, and this means your opening, your inciting incident, your turning point 1. This is the end of Act 1 here. The midpoint, what's the middle of your movie, and how do things change in a big way? Your turning point 2, going into the final act. Your climax, this is the ultimate expression of the conflict between these characters. And then finally, your resolution. So I would be, once you know what the pitch is, I would go back and look at every one of these to see, can you improve it to deliver on that pitch? And by the way, a lot of the scripts that didn't work, we got to the midpoint and the writer wasn't sure how to keep delivering things because they had a weak midpoint. A lot of times they didn't even have a midpoint at all. And because they weren't sure, that now they took the script off in another direction to make it more interesting. And it was like, okay, the first half delivered on the pitch and the second half didn't. So this stuff is important. Pass number 3, character and transformational journey. So now what you're doing is you want to lay out your character storylines for your main characters and make sure that they have an engaging beginning, middle, and a fitting ending. And this is, again, it's like if you're going to kill a character off and you do it, especially if you're talking like your villain, you do it in an average way, that's not a fitting ending. If they've done a lot of terrible things, you need to bring them to a different place here. I talked with the writer of the movie The Tudors, or the TV series The Tudors, and he said this was something he was thinking about all the time. He was thinking about, how do I first set these characters up in the beginning and the middle, so that by the time I got to their ending, and a lot of them, by the way, had their heads chopped off. That's a spoiler alert, but it was like he wanted their ending to be something that was incredibly interesting and unique and fit that particular character, right? So it's important. And then lay out the transformational journey. Where does this story start? And what happens all the way through? What's that journey that ultimately we're going to get to the end and we're going to go, wow, that's amazing. We're so glad we went through that journey. Now, this is, again, it's something that's important because the transformational journey makes up about 70% of the movie trailers that are out there. Next time you go to a movie, just watch. You'll see probably 10 trailers, and 7 of the 10 will be just the complete transformational journey. They'll tell you the whole story and they'll leave out the ending. And it's like, why are they doing that? So I asked a producer who that's all they do is make trailers for the studios. And he said, first, these sell really well if the transformational journey is strong. But he said, second, what it does is it gives the audience a chance to look and say, do I want to live that journey, right? And I've sat there ever since then and just watched how many of them that I looked at and went, no, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to go through that. But there were certain ones that I watched the whole movie and I was like, yeah, I have to come back and see that. I have to go sit in a theater and watch that. And it was because the transformational journey was incredible. Also, make sure it provides a profound change in some lead character. And it should be your protagonist. Then it's about elevating the situations and the scenes. So first, the situations, and we talked about this earlier, but let me just go over it again. The situations are the circumstances that challenge the character. If you have a scene where 2 people are sitting there talking, they're debriefing, they're telling their backstory, whatever it is. If that scene doesn't challenge those characters in some way, you don't need it. Or you need to completely rewrite it. And this is one of the ways back when we were producing, when we would do something that was, I'd work with the writer before we took it out to the studios. I'd look for those. Anytime I saw a situation that was just two people talking to each other, I'd ask the writer, okay, what are you trying to accomplish with this scene? And how can we make it challenging? And it made a huge difference when we did that rewrite. So your scenes, you need a scene arc. You probably already know all of these things: conflict and a challenging situation. I'd look at each one of these and make sure that they're present and they're as strong as they can be. Pass number 5. Now it's about the character actions. And remember, why this matters is 2 things. One is, if there's action on the screen, it's much more interesting to an audience that's sitting in a chair watching it. So, but the second is because these actions can sell the character to actors. And every reader that I have interviewed, every producer I've talked with about this says when they're reading your script, they're asking themselves, will this sell to a whole series of different people? Will it sell to actors? Will it sell to directors? Is it something that I can get funding for? Having actions on the screen help in all 3 cases. So pull out the character profile for your character. And if you don't have a character profile, well, that's something that we'll work on in a future class. But pull out their character profile, take a look, and just ask yourself these kinds of questions when you're talking about actions. What would this character with this profile item do here? So let's say you have a character that they self-sabotage, and that's part of who they are as a character. So you look at the scene, and basically what you're saying is, what would a character who self-sabotages do in this situation? What would they do here? Right? If you have a character who, one of their traits is that they rage, what would a character who is raging do here? Now, by the way, if you just take those 2, they're very, very different. Same scene, a character who self-sabotages would do something to sabotage themselves. A character who rages would either find an excuse to get angry or go off on all the other characters. They would take very different actions. That's important. If all of your main characters are taking the same actions, then you're not considering who they really truly are. So, and then reconsider any generic actions for your lead characters. So this is what I encourage people to do, especially before they go to producers, is to look through their lead character. Just take your protagonist and just go to every scene your protagonist is in and look to see, do they have any generic actions that everybody else would take in this scene? If they do, reconsider them. And just ask yourself, how do I, again, go back to who they are as a character and ask, how would a character with this profile take action here that's different than what everyone else would do? The more generic actions you can turn into ones that are specific for that character, the better your chance of success. Pass number 6. Now we're talking character dialogue. And we're going to do basically the same thing, except now you're looking at their dialogue. And I have a tendency to do this one character at a time. I take one character, we start at the beginning, and we go through every step, every line of dialogue all the way to the end. And I just ask, what would a character with this profile say here? If a character is self-sabotaging, they might put themselves down. If a character has, rage as part of their thing, I'm just using those for examples right now. If that's one of their traits, they're probably going to argue, they're probably going to escalate, they're probably going to yell things, and probably not very nice things. So again, reconsider any generic lines. If you look at a line for your protagonist and antagonist, and you immediately think anyone could say that exact line, then I would be rethinking that. I would look to the profile and say, how can I make that line uniquely theirs? Really important if you're trying to get actors. Finally, wordsmithing. And wordsmithing, again, this is one of those things where you can do the standard stuff you do. It's totally okay to go through and try to make every word the best you can and that kind of thing. But I would want to consider this. Success equals a fast read. Let me tell you where I got this. We were at Universal, and I'm interviewing a whole bunch of different producers over a 3-day period. And so the first day, somebody in the audience has said, I want to know what they're reading. So I said, okay, let's just ask that. So every producer that came in, I would ask them, hey, so what do you recommend that the audience reads? Right? We've got a whole group of writers here. What do you want them? What do you think they should read? And the first producer introduced it this way. He said, I just read this script. It was a really fast read. It's titled blah, 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 and it's about da, 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 da. I was like, okay. I didn't think about it at that moment. He said those words. I didn't catch it yet. The next producer came in and she goes, well, the script I'm going to tell you about, it's a dense read, but it's worth it. And I was like, that's interesting. She just told us it's a dense read, but it's worth it. And I said, the last producer told us about a script that was a fast read. And she goes, oh, well, my apologies on that. If you want me to tell you about those, I've got some of those I could present. And I said, no. What I'm wondering is, he told us that one was a fast read. You said this was a dense read. That was the first thing both of you said. Why is that? And she goes, well, because that's what's happening in this industry. She goes, I'm reading 10 scripts a week. My people are reading 10 to 15 scripts a week. First thing we want to know is it a fast read? Because if it's a fast read, I can read it while I'm waiting on dinner, right? If it's a dense read, I have to sit down and map out a couple of hours instead of an hour. So she said, this might make the difference. A fast read versus a dense read might make the difference between 1 hour versus 2 hours. It also might mean I can do it, I can fit it in someplace where the other I can't. And I was like, wow. After that, I asked about 50 producers, does this make a difference? Every single one said yes. And some of the readers said, that was back when they would pile the scripts up on a desk, and the readers would come in and pick up a couple of scripts and take them to read. Some of the readers said, I just look through, 3 or 4 pages and determine, is it a fast read or a slow read? If it's a fast read, then yeah, I put that in my pile. That might make the difference as to whether your script gets read or not. So it's worth it. Cut out any unnecessary words. You're not writing a novel here. We're not trying to explain everything. In fact, if you can learn how to write in a staccato way where it's like you take this scene, let's say you're writing this. The car pulls into the driveway, door opens, period. Jake gets out, period. Runs to the front door, period. Kicks it in, period. Or exclamation point at that point, right? It's like, first, I took out all the unnecessary words. Second, made it something that you could read in glances. Now, you don't have to go to that extreme, but anything you have written in there that will slow them down and doesn't actually give them something truly meaningful and worthwhile, I would cut it. And then, of course, go for strong nouns and emotional verbs. And this one, and both of these, by the way, but this one particular. I had a writer who said he sent his script out for coverage. It came back and they had passed on it. They'd given him, it was like, wow, that no recommend there, no consider. And so he asked me, what he should do. At that point, I had some time, so I took a look at it. In the first 3 pages, I saw the word walks like 6 times. John walks to the door. John walks across the room, right? John walks to the car. And I looked at it, and so I just did a quick search, and there were 72 times the writer used the word walks in that script. So here's what we did. I just showed him this real fast. I went to the first 10 times he said the word walks, and I just asked this question: what's the emotion that we want in that particular sentence? Right? So does he walk across the room, or does he run across the room because he's being chased? Does he skedaddle across the room because he thinks he's cool? Does he crawl across the room because he just got his ass kicked? Right? And so in that short and easy thing, he then went to every time he had the word walk, and looked to see, was there an emotional verb that he could use for it? He did that for about the top 6 verbs that he used, sent the exact same script, just with the different verbs, back to that same reader. They came back and gave it a recommend. Huge difference in the feel of the read. Now, this is all about making smart decisions. It really is. First, making a smart decision with your pitch. Do you have a pitch? And by the way, that's in any rewrite, that's the first thing we do, is we go to the pitch, or you create a pitch. Second, making sure you make smart decisions in the story, in the concept, in the transformational journey, in the theme, those kinds of things. Third, making sure that you're making smart decisions with your characters. Are they something that would attract major actors? Fourth, then making sure you're making smart decisions with your situations. Do you have compelling situations that challenge these lead characters? Then it's about making smart decisions with your action. First, do you even have action in some scenes? And second, could you make this script more action oriented and have the action come from the lead characters? Then at that point, it's about dialogue. Same thing. Could you make sure this dialogue, it comes from your lead characters and it's as compelling as possible? And then finally, the words. Can you make this a fast read that would increase your chance of success? Now, we took all of this and we built it into a program where you're going to make all of those smart decisions. This is the new version. We just rewrote this program. The group that went through it said it completely blew them away. We divided it into 2 parts. First part is the easiest way to improve a script. I'll come back to that in just a second. And it's the way that most people never even look at, they haven't even thought of. Second then is changes that elevate the script. So here we're looking for big picture improvements. This is what the A-list writers are doing first. Then over here, we're looking for, how do we make everything better that's already there? Stay with me for just a minute. Let me walk you through this. I'll give you a special. But this is a program that has changed a lot of writers' lives. All the ones that have won the major contests that have come out of our group, all the ones that are getting deals with producers because of the quality of their rewrite, and the ones that have gotten managers have gone through this program. So first lesson, we go to the pitch. So you're looking at your pitch. If you don't have a pitch, you're going to write one really fast there. And the objective with this pitch is to make sure it's something that gives your script a chance to sell. So you want to make sure that that's amazing. Then you're going to rewrite. Every single thing you rewrite and improve is going to match that pitch, so that you have something that if a producer requests it, they will love your project. Then it's about elevating the structure to make sure it's fantastic. Today I touched on structure, but once you get in this program, we will walk you through every bit of your structure and how do you make each one of them better. And then something that most people never even think of, which is building the genre conventions into your outline. And then of course, you're going to build it into the script, but we go to outline first because it's so much easier to work in a 5 to 10 page outline than to work in a 100-page script. So you will look at your outline, and let's say what you have right now is a drama with thriller conventions. You'll have so much more success if you honor the thriller conventions on that. And instead of a drama that touches on thriller, you actually make it a thriller and make it as strong as possible. If you have a rom-com, you want to honor those conventions. If you have an action story, same thing. Horror story, same thing. So you're going to find out what those conventions are for each of the genres. And then you are going to make sure that your outline delivers on that. We have had people improve their project just going through these first lessons by 30 to 50%. It's made a huge difference. From there, you'll go to your character profiles. If you don't have character profiles, you'll create them this day. If you do, you'll go through and make sure they hit everything you need and possibly rewrite them. Then you'll go to each character's story. You'll look at each of your lead characters, your top 3 or 4 characters, and you will make their individual story as strong as possible. This makes such a big difference. Many times we've written our characters into stories while we were still trying to figure them out. And a lot of times a character's story won't end in the best possible way, or it won't begin in the best possible way, or it will wander in the middle. This changes all of that. So then at that point, we'll go to the major problems that show up in the midst of rewrites. And you'll be looking at like big picture problems here. When people have, a story that starts in one place and ends in a place that doesn't make sense or doesn't deliver on the concept. When people have complete holes, or they have subplots that go in different directions than the story, or those kinds of things. There's about 15 different major problems that we see consistently in scripts that don't sell. This will be your chance to solve those at that moment. Then you're going to solve your character problems. We're going to give you about 15 character problems also that are typical, that the moment you solve them, it increases your chance of success. At that point, we'll make the outline fascinating and you will bring it to perfection. Now we come to part 2. So in part 1, we've worked entirely in the outline where it was so easy to make changes. Now we're going to come to part 2, and what you're going to do right off the bat, by the way, is make sure you go through your whole script and have it match all the changes that you just made. Then it's about the entertainment value. And this is something that came from an interview I had with a big producer who at one point had been the head of a studio. He said, I'm looking at a script and all I'm thinking is, does this keep an audience entertained? And I was like, oh, that's all you're thinking? And he goes, yeah, there's a lot of other things too. But he says, every scene I'm looking to see, is that entertaining? And then he said something that kind of shocked our audience. He said, the moment it's not entertaining, I'm done with that script. And I was like, you don't give it another chance? And he goes, yeah, he says, if the writer hasn't made it entertaining, well, that's on them. That's not me. So this is important. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to threaten you guys on this. But we're going to give you a way to look at every scene and rate the entertainment value. Now, you probably, if you're doing a 1 to 5 level, with 5 being incredibly entertaining and 1 being dull as can be, you probably have a lot of scenes that are at a 5, right? That are incredibly entertaining. but it's those ones that are at 2s and 3s that will cause the script to be turned down. And we've had so many people who've told me, no, my script is perfect all the way through. And when they did this process, they came back and went, wow, I had 15 scenes that I didn't know that were dull. And it's like, yeah, they're the transition scenes. They're the ones where everything is calmed down. You know, they're the scenes where you're trying to establish something or a character's telling backstory, right? It's like every one of those scenes you can make more entertaining, and that could change everything. Then how to make sure that you have the kind of scene structures that double the drama, right? This is the character emotion that's going on. Most people write in 3 scene structures and they just repeat them over and over and over, and they don't know that because they haven't looked at this. So we're going to give you a whole series of different scene structures so that you can look at every scene and say, how do I do this? Like here, let me give you an example. Let's say you have a scene that it starts out feeling totally safe, the character's okay, and then they walk into some surprise, everything changes and it shocks them, right? Or it puts them in serious danger. Okay, that's a scene structure. We start safe, and then we have an event, that a twist that takes us to, you know, some kind of major pain or fear or something like that, right? Another scene structure might be you set it up in advance where we're worried about this character all the way through, right? This one's called suspense. You know this one, right? It's like you go, character's walking down the street. At the end of the street, we get to see that there's somebody there with a knife who's about to attack them. The closer they get to that place, the more we're afraid for them. That's suspense. So we have about 8 different scene structures. I've told you 2 of them there. The other 6 will be the ones that make the difference for you. Now, lesson 14, then it's about adding meaningful action, not just action that's meaningless. And a lot of times people will put stuff in there. You'll have 2 characters sitting across each other. One will be sipping tea while she tells this story. And it's like, that's meaningless action. Actors call it busy work. What if you had her doing something that actually delivered the meaning of the scene, right? Or let's just take that same thing. Let's say right before the other lady got there, the first one put some poison in her drink. Now this action is incredibly meaningful. The more she sips this tea, the more likely she dies. So this is something that for a lot of people can change their writing in a big way. Realizing and noticing when they don't have meaningful action and then building it in. I'll give you a complete strategy for that. Lesson 15, how to make sure your characters have unique dialogue. We talked about this a little bit. But we actually there's more to that strategy we'll give you at that point. Then how to introduce your lead characters powerfully. This happened, I was at Pierce Brosnan's company. I'm interviewing his producer, and I said, so how do you give Pierce a script? And by the way, the first thing she said was, I was like, okay, so how many scripts do you read before you give Pierce one? And she goes, usually between 50 to 100. I said, so you're only giving him 1 out of 50? And she goes, yes, it needs to be that good. And I was like, okay, so then how do you introduce that script to him? And she goes, well, carefully. And she said, what she does is she puts one of those little blue tags at his character introduction. So if his character is introduced on page 15, that's the first thing he reads. And so she said, I put that in there. I hand it to him. I say, your character introduction's on page 15. He goes and reads that, and then he decides if he wants to read more. So she said, what happens at the end of his character introduction, and that's the scene he's introduced in. At the end of that character introduction, he either throws the script in the trash or he keeps reading. And she She said, if he throws the script in the trash, I know it's over. If he keeps reading, well, we've got a chance. So this is incredibly important. You need to know how to introduce those characters, your lead characters, powerfully. Then it's about the key scenes that will sell you. And there are certain scenes that, and I'll just give you one example, but there's 7 scenes that sell you as a writer. The most important is the opening scene. Back when we were producing, I told every writer, I want you to go back and rewrite this opening scene. And they would say, I think it's good enough as it is. And I go, okay, but this is the scene that introduces you. This is the one that when the reader or the producer opens to the first page, by the end of the first page, they've already decided whether you're a great writer or not. So I would get them to take the best scene they've written so far for the opening and double or triple the quality, and it changed everything. Producers would tell me from the very beginning, I knew that she was an incredible writer. And it's like, yeah, all we did was change one scene, but it changed everything. Now, there's not just one, there's 7 different scenes that if you make these amazing, you're going to end up with producers and readers loving you. You'll then test your description, go to your wordsmithing. You already know how to do this. We'll give you a couple of strategies that are specifically focused around making it easier for readers. And finally, you'll then use a process to elevate the quality of every scene. You'll go through it one at a time all the way through. Doing this rewrite process will change your life as a writer. We had one guy who came in. He told me before he took the previous version of this class that was about 50% less than this one. He told me up front his script was perfect. And I said, well, then use a different script. And he goes, no, he says, I want to see what you can do with this one. I don't know why, but that's what's important to him. So I said, okay, let me know at the end. He went through the program. At the end of it, he came back and said, I'm blown away. My script, I improved at least 50 different parts. Now, this was a script he thought was perfect from his former rewrite process. I'm going to tell you, going through this will change how you rewrite, and it will also change how people respond to you. So let me give you a special on this. I want you to bring in a script that you want to be great. And if, by the way, if you're working with producers right now, if you're about to take one out and market it or something like that, bring that script in and take it through this program. It starts on September 30th. This gives you a little time to work with your script beforehand, but I'm going to give you a special that comes from this. The normal price on this, it's a 10-week class, is $350. It is absolutely worth it at that because you're going to use this for every script you write from now on, and any script you've already written that you want to get into producers or win contests with. Here's the special. This is for the first 10 people. First 10 get in at $199. That saves you $150. And again, I promise you, on this program, you are going to use this process with every script you write from now on. You will use it with producers, with managers, the whole thing. This is the link. Just write it down. bit.ly bit.ly/I am rewriting. bit.ly/I am rewriting. And here's the last thing I just want you to know. This is the link, by the way, it's still here. Having a professional rewrite process will double the quality of your writing, right? It's like if even 5 things we said today you're not doing at a professional level, it could easily double the quality of your writing. It also will show you as a professional. So anytime anybody reads your script, they are going to immediately see you as a pro from the first scene. It will gain respect from producers. we had a writer who she sent out a script that she had gone through this class with, got it into a producer. The producer didn't read it. It was 3 weeks later, she called him up and she said, hey, I was just checking to see if you had had a chance to take a look at this. He goes, no. He says, I did request that, huh? And she goes, yes. And so finally she just went, listen, I'll make a deal with you. I'm going to call you back every week to see if you've had a chance to read it. If you'll just read the first 5 pages, I will leave you alone. Now, I don't recommend threatening producers, but it worked in that case. He said, okay. He says, I'll read your first 5 pages right now. And he hung up. She said, an hour later, she got a call from him. And he said, my God, you are an incredible writer. He was like, I'm just shocked. He says, I've never heard of you. And it was the quality of the writing. She had instant respect. He optioned it that day, and they started working together to move forward to produce it. Now, that makes a huge difference. The other thing this process does is it prepares you to work with managers. And a lot of times people think, well, once I get a manager, everything will be okay. If you know how to rewrite at a professional level, yes, it will. If you don't know how to rewrite at a professional level, you're going to be in trouble, because they're going to ask you to make changes to your current script so they can see that you know what you're doing. Second, every project you work on from now on, they're going to be working with you back and forth on it, and they will know your rewrite process. Here's the third thing. Their job is to sell you to producers, so they need to know that you know what you're doing. So if you're thinking about getting an agent or a manager in the future, this is going to be critically important. And then finally, it really increases the chance that you'll win contest and get optioned. We've had so many people who've gone through this program end up winning or being finalist in big contests. And we've had probably 5 times that amount get optioned because they went through this program. So if any of those things are important to you, and if you want to master this skill so that every script you write from now on is significantly better, just write down this link, click it, come join us. Again, the first 10 get in for $199. After that, it's going to jump. I think it's going to jump $30. And then it'll jump again and then again until it gets to the final price. But I will tell you, whatever price you end up paying for it, you'll look back later on and say, this program made a significant difference. I have interviewed so many of our writers after they made deals with producers. We had one who won a major contest, got a manager almost immediately, and ended up getting hired to rewrite a script for a director. In that case, when I interviewed him, he called me back and he said, I want to say thanks. And I said, okay, cool. Can I interview you? When I interviewed him, he said it all came down to this program. He said it completely changed how he thought about the rewrite process. It doubled the quality of his script, and that made the difference for him. So if this is something that matters to you, if you really want to make it in this industry and have a real chance, master this process. I promise you, you will love what it does for your writing. So with that, I want to thank you guys for being with me today. I hope you already got something valuable out of this. And I promise you, what we just did was just the tip of the iceberg. I basically gave you a lot of surface level stuff that is valuable, but when you get inside this program and you join us, what happens at that point is you will get all the specifics on how to do these. You will learn these strategies. You will use them right that moment to improve your script, and that will change things for you. After you go through this program, every script you write or rewrite from now on will benefit from this. So again, I hope you got a lot out of this, and I promise you, you're going to get 10 times that or 20 times that in this program. So with that, this is Hal Krosman wishing you the absolute best with your writing. I will see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.